All right, we're back at the Capitol, and this KWIX at the Capitol broadcast continues on AM 1230 and online at centralmoinfo.com. We're glad to welcome back to a KWIX at the Capitol broadcast. You might be only our second repeat guest, is Representative Jerry Nolte of Gladstone. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for asking me.
We wanted to talk to you about a bill for which a hearing was scheduled. I know yesterday a lot of folks turned up at that. I'm not sure if it was the biggest hearing that's been down here with some of the issues that have been on the table with Proposition B and other things like that, but I know there were a lot of folks at the hearing yesterday for your bill. It deals with driver's examination tests, and to have those, your bill would have those tests be given all in English. Let's talk about that hearing yesterday. What was the response like?
Well, yesterday's hearing, in fact, was part two. There were two public hearings. One was earlier on. Yesterday, the main number of people who were there were testifying in opposition, but we had, of course, people testifying in favor at the previous one. So, in part because of the bad weather, the chairman wanted to make sure that everybody had a chance to participate and make their views known.
All right. How has this bill been received by both the supporters and opponents?
It's been received pretty well, really. It's one of those things that is going to break down on certain lines as far as if you're opposed or if you were in favor. But I think it's a reasonable piece of legislation. I think we have a good shot at getting it through, certainly the House. Opponents,
I assume, are going to say that this is an attack on folks who are coming to this country, and again, obviously haven't learned English. See it as just an attack on those folks. What were the motivations behind doing this?
The initial motivation was that there was a lawsuit in Oklahoma. Oklahoma at that time had similar statutes that we have right now. We offer it in 11 languages, as to say the driver's test. They coincidentally had about 11 to 12 languages there also. The incident that sort of sparked it was some people coming in and they wanted their license to be given in Farsi. That was not on the list of immediately available, and what happened was they ended up suing the state of Oklahoma. Where it came down with was we can either do all the languages or just English, and the obvious answer for Oklahoma was to English only, and Representative Terrell, who testified in favor of my bill, was the author of that piece of legislation.
How does this currently work? Because I assume, let's say, Swahili, for example, for the sake of example, if you come and you learn how to drive in this state, going through the test and going through that whole process, learning it in Swahili, does it equip you then to go out on our state roads and see signs that are in English and so on and so forth? Are you prepared for that if you go about it that way?
Well, the thing is that is, of course, one of the reasons for having it in English only is that there are a number of signs, obviously, that are out there that are graphic in nature. We all know what a stop sign looks like, and that will be generally recognized by people from foreign countries. But even just coming in here this morning from my apartment at the Capitol, there was one of those large signs that has the verbal commands. This one happened to say, merge left, exit ramp closed. So it's really a public safety issue. Also, in fact, Ann Ferrero of the Federal Motor Carriers Safety Administration, now she was talking about commercial, but I think it applies to other licenses as well. And she's quoted last October saying, because if a driver cannot comprehend basic commands, then it puts law enforcement officers at risk. Like I said, she was talking about commercial licenses at that time, but I think the same applies to traditional or the everyday licenses we all have in our wallets.
Does this bill, or does somewhere on other state law, is it anywhere addressed to help folks that come into this state particularly and want to learn to drive, to help them gain a knowledge in the English language?
There are, English as a second language courses offered both through the school system and in other venues, so there are a number of those opportunities. And if a person comes to this country from a foreign land, just say Germany for an example, they come to this country with a valid German driver's license. They are able to use that license for a period of time, so it's not as though they have to immediately jump in and do the test in English. They have a grace period where they can start to work through it.
All right. We talked about the opposition that testified at yesterday's, and again, you said there were a lot of folks that at yesterday's hearing in particular came out in opposition to this. What are some of the groups that are getting behind that, some of the organizations that you're hearing from?
In opposition?
Yes.
MIRA and some of the other, I think they would define themselves as immigrant advocacy groups, is probably the broadest way to put it. Catholic Charities was another group that was in opposition. And I understand their concerns, but I believe that you know, while I can understand their concerns, I think that this is still the right course to pursue in this area.
All right. It sounds like, I guess it would be a simple notion if this passed, you just simply start giving everything in English. What would it take to actually implement this?
Actually, it would be very simple. It would just be, we would no longer be issuing the other tests. Something else that I wanted to mention, I think was an interesting point that came up during our proceedings, and that was that right now, if we have someone who is a resident of Missouri, but they happen to be illiterate or not able to comprehend the written test as they could, it can be given to them verbally, so the written test can in fact be read to them. If someone comes to this country and they have English speaking skills, but they are maybe not as up to speed on, say, the written English ability, that would also be available to someone from a foreign country who wanted to take our tests. It could be read to them in English, and then they could respond that way if they were more comfortable with the spoken as opposed to the written word. So there's more latitude in it than one might think originally.
Well, and it sounds to me like it is at the base level, don't you want everybody to be able to read English? So
absolutely,
that's what it boils down to.
It's another way of encouraging assimilation. I think that's one of the important things, is that when we have people come to this country legally, I think we all welcome legal immigrants. It is, you know, that they learn to speak English is certainly one of the requirements. Well, requirements so much, but certainly something that we would want them to do to be able to assimilate. And in fact, there is a requirement in the citizenship process that they be able to speak English at a certain level.
What is the alternative to this? I mean, I presume we would have to start putting out road signs and everything else in multiple languages?
It's possible. Right now, I said we have 11 languages that is available in California. Has 34, but in fact, in my home school district, there are some 50-odd languages spoken just in that small geographic area, and some 322 throughout the United States. So it becomes very unwieldy if this lawsuit that happened in Oklahoma were to apply out. We could find ourselves in a position where we have to accommodate 300+ languages in some form or fashion, which becomes, you know, very difficult to manage.
And it's, again, especially being from a district where you are a very urban district, you do have folks who are living in your district of many different national origins. It's easy to see how some of those folks would be offended by this and perceive it as an attack.
I can see that, and the younger people obviously are able to pick up languages much more quickly. Someone who is already bilingual, say they speak German and French, picking up a third language is easier because they have that background of being able to do that. But in fact, my district is suburban, so really it's how that it would impact a truly urban district is is probably even more pronounced. But the important thing is we need to bring these people into our society that are here in our midst. We need to, if they're here legally, bring them into the full the full benefit of our society as far as being able to participate with the hope of citizenship and becoming good Americans.
Your legislation passed out of the hearing yesterday, and
yes.
How soon do you expect to see this on the floor? What do you think will happen when it gets there?
Certainly the next step is to go to Rules Committee, which is rather a gatekeeper committee, of course. After that, it would be at the pleasure of the floor leader, and it's certainly, I would hope it would come soon. It's not just on the merit, but there are a lot of bills out there, so of course there's it's a matter of keeping the traffic going and making sure all the bills are in an orderly fashion coming up, so I would be in that queue.
All right. Just a few minutes left, a couple of other issues that I thought maybe we would discuss. And I didn't get this opportunity to speak with my previous guests this morning, but I want to ask you, being from, again, a more urban, certainly than the district I'm from, district, obviously Proposition B has been a huge issue. Not only, obviously didn't stop in November, it's continued into the legislative session. And without looking at the map, I'm going off the cuff, assuming that if not all of your district was one of the counties that voted in favor of Proposition B, that at least some of the folks you covered did vote for it. So what position does that put you in? Where do you stand on the efforts to change that bill now?
I've got to basically look at it in light of what is there. I mean, there are a couple of different types of changes available. There are certainly technical changes that would reinforce the will of the voters. But what I've been doing is I've been hearing a lot from the people in the district. I'm inclined to wait and see what my voters have to say, weigh in, get their opinions so they can properly reflect their opinions. But I'm also obliged to make sure that I do more research than the average person and have a better understanding. So should I choose to vote for one of the alterations to Prop B, it's incumbent upon me to, as soon as possible, explain that to the people who sent me here and make sure that they understand why I would be voting that way. But as a rule, I think we're all rather reluctant to overturn it, or to at least augment it to some degree.
Are you at the point then right now of, I mean, do you think you would vote for anything beyond just technical changes? Certainly not a repeal.
No, I can't see voting for a repeal. I think what we need to do is to look at this and be able to explain it to the people who voted for it, because it's incumbent upon us to make sure that they understand it. But at this point, I would be hard pressed to vote in favor of certainly not a full repeal, but certainly any substantive changes. I would want to take a very hard look at, and I need to put the additional homework into it. I've looked at it to a degree so far, but my main activities have been up to this point been working for job creation, increasing economic development atmosphere in Missouri.
Let's talk then about the effort by the Senate just the other day voting on the franchise tax, voting that down. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts on that issue?
In fact, I do have currently a bill that would phase out the franchise tax, which is basically a double tax on businesses, and it basically diverts money away from going into wages or improvements or any other useful course as far as expanding business to go to taxes, which we are obviously need taxes, but the number one priority has to be creating an atmosphere where jobs are created, and that is what's going to really pull us out of this recession is new jobs and people getting back to work.
So obviously you see that then as an economic development issue.
Yes, it is one of the group of issues referred to as the Fix the Six, which they are in total aimed at improving that atmosphere, and in my case, for my home area of Kansas City, making us more competitive with states like Kansas.
All right, Representative Jerry Nolte has been our guest. He represents the 33rd District in the Gladstone area. And glad to have you back on. If folks want to talk to your office about some of these issues, how can they do that?
They can call my office at 573-751-1470.
All right, Representative Jerry Nolte, thanks for being with us on KWIX at the Capitol today.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to give the studio back to Bob Pretty, showing up now with the MissouriNet, and let them have their toys back. We'll get out of their hair. But again, we want to thank the MissouriNet for the use of the studio this morning. I want to thank my guests, Representative Nolte, also Representative Eric Burleson, you heard before him, Attorney General Chris Koster, and Representative Jason Kander with us this morning. That's going to do it for this broadcast. We'll take you back to Trading Post coming up next. This is Mike Lear. All right.
Before I stand up and knock over a chair.